I never imagined that a piece of bread could change a life, much less three. When I was 40, my world was simple. A folding table on the corner of Morelos Avenue. A faded tarp that barely provided shade. And my hands always covered in flour, kneading dough from 4 in the morning. I didn't have much. But I had bread. And at the end of the day, when I had some time to spare, I would do something that most people didn't understand. He was giving it away. People looked at me strangely. They told me I was crazy, that I was stupid for wasting food on those street kids, that they were going to betray me, that they were going to rob me, that I was just wasting my time and money. But I kept doing it, because there were 3 children waiting for me every afternoon. 3 thin, barefoot siblings with hungry but hopeful eyes, and I couldn't simply ignore them. Nobody else gave them anything. Nobody else saw them, but I do. And that's why I lost everything. They removed me from my position. They humiliated me. They left me out on the street, all to give bread to 3 children that nobody wanted. But what I didn't know then was that those children were not going to forget me. 25 years passed, 25 years of struggle, of pain, of resisting when everyone told me to give up. I grew old. My body grew tired. My hands became deformed. But I never stopped making bread. And I never stopped thinking about them. Until one day, when I was 65 years old, and could barely stand up, 3 luxury SUVs parked in front of my house, and 3 men came down from them. Successful men, well-dressed, with families, with businesses. But when they looked at me, they were still my children. The children to whom no one else wanted to give bread. The children the world had forgotten. And they came to return everything I had given them. Multiplied by 1,000. This is my story. The story of how a piece of bread sowed hope. And how that hope, 25 years later, returned transformed into love. I was 40 years old when I saw them for the first time. 40 years of getting up at 4 in the morning to knead dough, of taking my bread cart to the corner of Morelos Avenue, of selling under the sun and the rain. 40 years of cracked hands, a tired back, of smiling at people even on bad days. My stall wasn't much. A folding table, an old tarp that barely provided any shade, and my trays of bread covered with cloth napkins. Sweet bread, rolls conscious, arrayas, the things my mother taught me to make when I was a child. Before she passed away, I lived alone. I never married. I never had children of my own. Life simply didn't take me down that path. But I didn't complain. I had my routine, my job, my independence. I paid my rent, ate what I needed, and slept peacefully. I wasn't asking for more. The people in the neighborhood knew me. Donna Lupita from the fruit stand, Don Chai from the flower stand, the lady who sold tamales on the other corner. We were all part of the same scene. We greeted each other with a nod, watched each other's things when someone had to go to the bathroom, and lent each other change when needed. It was a simple life. But there was something I did that nobody else did. At the end of the day, when I was about to pack up, I always had some bread left over. Sometimes a lot, sometimes a little. It depended on the day. And instead of throwing it away or taking it home to let it go stale, I left it there. In a paper bag, next to my stall, with a napkin on top. For those who were hungry, I never stayed to see who got it. I'd go home, put away my cart, take off my shoes, and forget about it. But one afternoon, while I was collecting my trays, I heard a small voice behind me. Lady, I turned around. There were 3 children, 3 skinny, dirty, barefoot children. The oldest was about 11 years old, the middle one maybe 9, and the youngest was no more than 6. All 3 had the same look. Hungry, scared, but with some hope. The oldest one was the one who spoke. Are you the one who leaves the bread? I remained silent for a few seconds. I didn't know what to say. Yes, I finally replied. Are you the ones taking it? The boy nodded. The other 2 stayed behind, clutching his torn shirt. Thank you, she said softly. You've saved us many nights. I felt something tight in my chest. Where are your parents? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. The boy lowered his gaze. We don't have any. The youngest one started to cry silently. The middle one hugged him, and I couldn't just leave. I bent down in front of them, took out what was left on the tray, and gave it to them. 2 conchas, 3 bolillos and a sugar ear pastry. Here you go. And come back earlier tomorrow, before it's all gone." The older boy looked at me with shining eyes. "Oh really? Oh really?" They took the bread carefully, as if it were something sacred, and they ran off, clutching the pieces to their chests. I stood there, watching them disappear into the crowd. I couldn't sleep well that night. I thought about those children, about their dirty feet, about their protruding ribs, about their eyes that silently pleaded for help. And the next day, when I arrived at my post, there they were, sitting on the opposite sidewalk, waiting for me. From that day on, they became part of my routine. They arrived every afternoon around 5 o'clock, when there were fewer people around. They sat nearby, without bothering anyone, without asking for anything, and I always saved them something. Sometimes it was bread that hadn't been sold. Sometimes it was bread that I set aside on purpose. The freshest, the biggest loaf. I asked them their names. The oldest was named Daniel. The middle one, Miguel. The youngest, Carlitos. They were siblings. They had lost their parents in an accident 2 years earlier. They had no family. They lived on the streets, sleeping under bridges, scavenging for food in the garbage. Daniel took care of his brothers as best he could. It was clear that he was strong inside, even though on the outside he looked like he was about to break. I started giving them more than just bread. I gave them water. I bought them used clothes at the flea market. I washed their faces in the public restroom on the corner. I spoke to them affectionately, as if they were my own. I don't know when it happened, but those children became my reason for continuing to knead dough every morning. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was for them. Because when I saw their faces light up, when they received a chocolate concha, when I heard Carlitos laugh at something silly, when Daniel said to me, "Thank you, Mrs. Alina," with that seriousness of an adult in a child's body, I felt that my life had meaning. People started to realize. Some looked at me strangely. Others criticized me in hushed tones. "That woman is spoiling those kids. He feeds them for free and then they'll want more. Those kids are thieves. You shouldn't let them near your stall." But I didn't pay any attention to them, because I knew something they didn't. Those children weren't thieves. They weren't lazy. They weren't bad. They were just hungry. And I had bread. It's that simple. That's how human it is. And if the world couldn't understand that, then the problem wasn't mine. It was theirs. Not everyone in the neighborhood looked upon me favorably. Most of the vendors left me alone. Everyone had their own problems, their own battles. But there was one woman who, from the beginning, looked at me as if I were her enemy. Her name was Estella. He sold cakes and juice 3 stalls down. He was younger than me, maybe around 35, but he had the hard face of someone who'd fought hard in life. He always dressed in black, always had a scowl on his face, and always spoke with venom in his voice. At first it was just glances. I'd arrive with my cart, set up my stall, and I could feel her watching me from afar, as if waiting for me to make a mistake, as if looking for something to complain about. But when I started giving bread to the children, everything changed. One afternoon, while Daniel, Miguel, and Carlitos were eating, sitting on the bench next to my stall, Estella approached. "Hey Alina," she said to me, in that raspy smoker's voice. "What are you doing?" I looked up. "Sorry. What are you doing feeding those children?" I looked at her, not understanding. "I give them bread." "Why?" She crossed her arms. "Because those kids are a problem. They're around here every day, bothering and scaring away the customers. And you feed them like they're your pets." I felt the hot blood rushing to my face. "They're not pets. They're children. They're thieves." He interrupted me. "The other day I saw the big one going into Don Ramiro's store. He probably stole something." "That's not true," I said firmly. "Daniel would never steal anything. I knew him." Estella let out a dry laugh. "Oh Alina, you're always so naive. Do you think that just because you give them bread they're going to respect you? Those children will betray you as soon as they get the chance." "They won't betray me," I replied, looking her in the eyes. "Because they're not what you think." She narrowed her eyes. "We'll see," and he left. But it wasn't the last time he bothered me. In the following weeks, Estella began to make loud comments whenever the children passed by. "Here come the starving people. Watch your wallets. There are thieves around here. They should get them out of the neighborhood before they steal something big. The children heard everything. Daniel clenched his fists but said nothing. Miguel lowered his head. Carlitos hid behind his brothers and I felt a rage that I didn't know how to control. Because it was one thing for them to attack me, but attacking 3 defenseless children, that was different. One day Estella went further. I was putting my things away when she arrived, accompanied by 2 other vendors. Don Ramiro, the store owner, and Mrs. Patty, who sold used clothing. Elena, Estella said with a fake smile. We need to talk. What about? I asked, without stopping packing. Of the children? I stopped. We've been talking amongst ourselves, he continued, gesturing to the other 2. And we think those kids are affecting the neighborhood. They scare away customers. They litter the streets. And you're spoiling them by giving them free food. I give them my bread, I said, feeling the tremor in my voice. It's nobody else's business. Yes, it is our problem, Don Ramiro interjected. Because this street belongs to everyone. And if you keep attracting those vagrants, we're going to have more problems. They're not homeless, I replied, raising my voice. They're children who have no one. What do you want me to do? Let them starve to death. Estella took a step forward. We want you to stop feeding them. And if you don't, we're going to talk to the market manager and have you removed from here. My heart stopped. Losing my job meant losing everything. Without my job, I had no way to earn money. Without money, I couldn't pay my rent. Homeless, I'd end up just like those kids. But when I looked to the side and saw Daniel watching me from the corner, with his brothers holding hands, I knew I couldn't abandon them. I'm not going to stop helping you, I said, trembling but firm. Do whatever you want. Estella smiled contemptuously. Fine, you asked for it, and they left. That night, as I walked back home, I felt fear for the first time in years. Fear of losing my job. Fear of not being able to continue helping the children. Fear that Estella would carry out her threat. But something stronger than fear lived inside me. It was the certainty that those children needed me, and I wasn't going to let them down, even if it cost me everything. Estella's threat didn't just stay as words. 3 days later, the market manager arrived. His name was Don Heriberto, a fat man with a thick mustache and a grumpy face. He was the one who decided who could sell and who couldn't, the one who collected the weekly fees, the one who had the final say in everything. He arrived at my post mid-morning, accompanied by Estella. She had that victorious smile that made my stomach churn. Alina, said Don Heriberto, without greeting her. We have a problem. I stopped attending to a customer and looked at him. What's the problem? Don Heriberto? I've been told you're giving food to some street children. And that because of you, they're hanging around the area all day. I felt the rage rising in my throat. It's not my fault. Those children were already here. I'm just giving them the bread I have left over. I don't care if you have too much or not, he replied sternly. You're attracting problems. Customers are complaining, vendors are complaining, and I can't allow one person to jeopardize the order of the market. Order, I repeated, incredulous. Is feeding 3 hungry children putting order at risk? Estella intervened, crossing her arms. Yes, Elena, because tomorrow there will be 5 children, then 10, and then it will be full of homeless people. Is that what you want? They're not homeless, I said, clenching my fists. They're children who lost their parents. Where's your humanity? My humanity lies in taking care of my business, Estella replied coldly. Something you should learn. Don Heriberto raised his hand to silence us. That's enough, Elena. I'm going to give you a warning. If I see those children near your post again, I'm throwing you out of here, understood? I remained silent. Understood, he repeated. Louder, understood, I murmured, my voice breaking. He nodded and left. Estella gave me one last contemptuous look before following him. I stood there, trembling, not out of fear, out of helplessness. That afternoon, when Daniel, Miguel, and Carlitos arrived as usual, I didn't know what to do. I saw them approaching from afar, with their slow steps, their dirty clothes, their shy smiles, and I felt like my heart was breaking. Daniel noticed something strange about my face. Are you all right, Mrs. Elena? I wanted to say yes to them. I wanted to smile and give them their bread like every day, but I couldn't. Children, I began, my voice trembling. I need to talk to you. They approached, serious. I crouched down in front of them to be at their level. Listen, there are people here who don't want you to come. Bad people, and they told me that if I see you near my post again, they're going to kick me out. Daniel frowned. Is it our fault? No, my child. It's not your fault. It's the fault of heartless people. Miguel, the one in the middle, asked in a small voice. Aren't you going to give us bread anymore? I felt the tears burning my eyes. Yes, I will give them bread, always. But they can't come here. It's too dangerous for me. Carlitos, the youngest, started to cry. Are we not going to see her anymore? I hugged him. I hugged all three of them. Yes, you're going to see me. But you have to do it somewhere else. Do you know the park 2 blocks away? The one with the broken swings? Daniel nodded. See you there. Every day at 6 in the afternoon. I'll be waiting for you with your bread. Okay? They nodded silently. But in his eyes I saw something I had never seen before. Sadness, confusion, as if they didn't understand why the world was so cruel to them. And I didn't understand it either. From that day on, everything changed. I continued selling my bread at the stand, but at 6 o'clock sharp I would quickly pack everything up and run to the park. There they were, waiting for me on the same bench. He gave them bread. He asked them how they were. He cleaned their faces with a damp cloth. He told them stories to make them laugh. But it wasn't the same anymore, because now we had to hide. As if feeding 3 children were a crime. And the worst part was what happened 2 weeks later. Estella saw me running out of the market with my bag of bread. She followed me, and she saw me handing out food to the children in the park. The next day, Don Heriberto arrived at my post earlier than ever. Alina, she said to me, in a cold voice. Pack your things. Pack your things. You're leaving today. But Don Heriberto, I haven't done anything wrong. I warned you. And you didn't listen. So now you're leaving, please, I begged, feeling tears stream down my cheeks. This job is all I have. If you take it away, I have no way to eat. No way to pay my rent. You should have thought about it before. I'm just giving bread to 3 children, I cried, desperate. What's wrong with that? He looked at me indifferently. The problem is that you disobeyed. And here, my word is law. And just like that, they took me out. I had to pack up my things in front of everyone. In front of the other vendors who looked at me with pity. In front of Estella, who smiled contentedly. As I was loading my cart, I heard his voice behind me. I told you, Alina. Those children were only going to bring you trouble. I didn't answer him. I had no strength. I just walked, dragging my shopping cart through the streets, not knowing where to go, no position, no income, no future. But that afternoon, at 6 o'clock, I was in the park, with my bag of bread, waiting for my children, because even if they had taken everything from me, they weren't going to take that away. The first few days after losing my job were the hardest of my life. I had nowhere to sell. I had no income. And the savings I had stored in a can under my bed were running out fast. I tried to find another place to set up my stall. I went to other corners, other streets, other markets. But it was always the same. There's already someone selling here. We don't have space. You need a permit. And when I mentioned that I came from the Morelos market, some people even slammed the door in my face, as if Don Heriberto had spread the word that I was a problem. One morning, while kneading dough in my small kitchen, I realized something terrible. I only had enough flour for 3 more days. After that, nothing. I sat on the floor, my hands full of dough, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. For losing my job, for trampling my dignity, for the fear of not knowing what would happen to me. But more than anything, I cried for the children. Because if I didn't have enough to eat, how could I continue giving them bread? That afternoon, when I arrived at the park, Daniel noticed something strange about my face. Mrs. Alina, are you crying? No, my child, I lied, wiping my eyes. I just got a little bit of dust in my eye. But he knew me well. He looked at me with those big, serious eyes. He lost his job because of us, didn't he? I remained silent. Miguel and Carlitos looked at me, scared. It's not their fault, I finally said, crouching down in front of them. It's never been their fault. It's the fault of bad people. Of people who don't understand that helping others isn't a crime. Daniel lowered his head. We can stop coming in, so that you can get your job back. No, I said. taking him by the shoulders. I don't want you to stop coming. You are the only good thing that's happened to me in a long time. Carlitos hugged me, and then Miguel, and then Daniel. And there, in that dirty park, with those 3 hungry children hugging me, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Peace. But peace doesn't pay the rent. 2 weeks later, my landlady knocked on my door. "Alina, I need to talk to you." I opened the door. She was an older woman, about 60 years old, with a kind but firm face. "Tell me, Mrs. Trini Elena, you're 2 months behind on your rent." "I know," I said, clasping my hands together. "But I promise you that." "You've already promised me 3 times, she interrupted. "And I've been patient with you, because I know you're a good person. But I have to pay my bills too, honey. If you don't pay me this week, I'm going to have to ask you to move out." I felt the floor open up beneath my feet. "Mrs. Trini, please, give me a little more time. I'm looking for a job." "I'm sorry, Alina, but I can't wait any longer." And he left. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, doing calculations in my head that never added up. I didn't have money for rent. I didn't have a job. I had no one to ask for help. And for the first time in my life, I thought about giving up, in ceasing to need, in ceasing to fight, in simply letting go. But then I remembered something my mom told me once, when I was a child and I was crying because other children were making fun of me at school. "Helena, the world will always be cruel to those with kind hearts. But don't let them harden you. Because the day you lose your kindness, that's the day they'll have one." And I wasn't going to let them win. The next day, I made a decision. I sold the few valuable things I owned: a silver ring my mother had given me, some old earrings, a thin chain. With that money I paid the back rent and bought flour. Donna Trini gave me 1 more month. But she warned me it was the last time. And I decided to do something desperate. If I couldn't sell at a fixed stall, I would sell on the street. Carrying my basket of bread on my arm, walking along the avenues, offering my product to anyone who passed by. It was humiliating. It was exhausting. But it was the only thing I could do. Some people were buying, others ignored me. Others looked at me with pity, and I endured it. Because every loaf of bread he sold meant that the children would have something to eat that night, and that was all that mattered. But my body couldn't hold out as long as my will. One afternoon, while walking in the sun with my basket full, I felt dizzy. Everything started to spin. My legs trembled, and suddenly, everything went black. I woke up on the floor, with a group of people surrounding me. "Ma'am, are you okay? Someone call an ambulance." It seems she fainted from the heat. I tried to get up, but I didn't have the strength. A woman helped me sit down. She gave me water. She asked if I had anyone I could call. "No," I said weakly. "I have no one." And at that moment, lying on the floor, surrounded by strangers, I realized something terrible. She was alone. Completely alone, and maybe I wouldn't be able to continue helping children for much longer. Because my body was giving out, even though my heart didn't want to. I recovered from fainting, but something changed in me that day. It was not my will, nor my heart. It was my body that told me, "You can't keep going at this pace anymore." I was 42 years old, but I felt 60. My hands ached all the time. My back throbbed every time I carried the basket. And at night, when I tried to sleep, I felt so deeply tired that I was afraid I wouldn't wake up. But I kept going, because the children were waiting for me. Every afternoon, at 6 o'clock, I would arrive at the park with my bag of bread. Sometimes I brought little, sometimes I brought more. It depended on how much I had sold that day, but I never arrived empty-handed. Daniel, Miguel, and Carlitos were always there, sitting on the same bench, facing the park entrance, waiting for me. And when they saw me arrive, their faces lit up. That light in her eyes was the only thing that kept me standing. One day, Daniel asked me something that broke my heart. "Mrs. Alina, why do you continue to help us?" I looked at him, surprised. Why wouldn't I? He lowered his head. "Because everyone treats us like garbage. They kick us out of places. They yell at us. They insult us. Nobody wants us around but you. You lost your job because of us. You lost your money. And you keep coming back." I felt a lump in my throat. "Because you are not trash, Daniel. You never have been, and you never will be. But people say, People say a lot of things, I gently interrupted, but that doesn't make them true. You're a good boy. Your brothers are good boys. And I know that someday, when you grow up, you're going to do amazing things. I know it. He looked at me with shining eyes. Do you really believe that? I know, I repeated firmly. That night as I walked back to my room, I thought about those words. Did he really believe that? Yeah. Because there was something different about those children. A strength, a light. Despite all they had suffered, they weren't bitter. They weren't cruel. They didn't hurt anyone. They just wanted to survive, and I was going to help them do it. Even if it cost me everything. The months passed. I continued selling bread on the streets. Sometimes I barely earned enough to eat. Other times I earned nothing. I stopped paying for utilities. First the gas, then the electricity. I lived by candlelight at night. I cooked with firewood I collected from the street. I lost weight. My clothes were too big. My face looked thinner, more tired. But I didn't give up. I learned to live with less, to stretch every penny, to make the flour go further, to not waste a single crumb. And I learned something more important. I learned that dignity is not measured by what you have. It is measured by what you do when you have nothing. I had no money. I had no job. I had no security, but I had your word. And he had promised those children that he would never abandon them. And that promise was worth more than anything. There were dark days. Days when I didn't sell anything and I had to choose between eating myself or giving bread to the children. I always chose the children. Days when the rain ruined my merchandise and I had to throw everything away. Days when people treated me badly, insulted me, told me I was a fool for wasting my bread on bums. But I never answered them. She just lowered her head, and he kept walking because he knew something they didn't know. That love is not wasted. That kindness is never in vain. That sowing in hungry hearts always bears fruit. Although it may take years to grow. One afternoon, while I was giving bread to the children in the park, Daniel told me something I never forgot. Mrs. Alina, when I grow up, I'm going to be someone important, and I'm going to help people like you. Good people that nobody sees. I smiled, stroking her hair. I know you'll do it, my boy. How does he know? Because you have a good heart. And that's the most important thing. Miguel, the one in the middle, added, I'm going to be important too. I'm going to have a lot of money, and I'm going to give it to you. I laughed softly. I don't need money, my child. I just need you to be happy. Carlitos, the youngest, hugged me tightly. I love you very much, Mrs. Elena, and I, with tears in my eyes, hugged him back. I love them very much too. All three of them. That night, as I walked alone through the empty streets, I felt something strange. It wasn't happiness, because my life was still difficult. It wasn't hope, because I didn't see how things could improve. It was peace. The peace of knowing I was doing the right thing. Even if the world told me otherwise. Even if I lost everything. Even if nobody saw me. I knew it, and that was enough. Years passed, one after the other, slow and heavy as stones. I continued selling bread on the streets. My body tired more quickly. My hands trembled more. My steps were slower. But he continued, and the children kept coming to the park. I watched them grow up. Daniel was no longer that skinny 11-year-old boy. Now he was 14, almost 15. His voice had changed. His shoulders had broadened. But his eyes were still the same, serious, deep, full of a determination I didn't understand where he got it from. Miguel was 12 years old. He was quieter than Daniel, but more observant. He was always asking me questions. How to make bread. How to calculate accounts. How to talk to people to make a sale. And Carlitos, my little one, was already 9 years old. He was still the most tender of the three of us. The one who hugged me the tightest. The one who told me I love you, without hesitation. I loved them, as if they were my own. And they treated me like I was their mother. One day, Daniel arrived at the park with something in his hand. A crumpled piece of paper. Mrs. Alina, she said to me, her voice filled with emotion. Look at this. I grabbed it. It was a flyer from a school. Scholarship program for low-income children. Free education. School supplies included. Daily meals. I looked up. Daniel, is this for you? He nodded. A lady gave it to us on the street. She said that if we go to the office tomorrow, they can register us. But we need an adult to sign. My heart skipped a beat. Do you want to go to school? Yes, Daniel said, his eyes shining. I want to learn. I want to be someone. I don't want to live on the streets my whole life. Miguel and Carlitos nodded behind him. Please, Mrs. Alina, said Miguel. Will you come with us? Will you sign for us? I felt the tears burning my eyes. Of course, my children. Of course. The next day, I took them to the program office. It was a small place, with yellow painted walls and old desks. A young woman served us. She was friendly, soft-spoken, and wore round glasses. Good morning, how can I help you? Daniel handed him the steering wheel. We want to register. The woman looked at the 3 children. Then she looked at me. Are you the mother? I hesitated for a second. I am her tutor. She nodded, without asking any further questions. She gave us some forms to fill out. As I wrote, I felt my hands trembling. Not from fear, from excitement. Because those children were going to have something they had never had before, an opportunity. We finished the paperwork. The woman checked everything and smiled. Very well, you can start on Monday. Classes are from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Breakfast and lunch are provided here. And these are your uniforms. She handed them bags of clothes. The children took them carefully, as if they were treasures. Thank you, Daniel said, his voice breaking. You're welcome, son, and good luck. We left there and the children couldn't stop smiling. Carlitos was jumping around, Miguel was laughing, and Daniel hugged me tightly. Thank you, Mrs. Elena. Thank you for everything. I hugged him back, crying. You deserve this and more, my children, much more. That night, as I walked to my room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope, because those children were going to be okay. They were going to study, they were going to eat, they were going to have a future. And although I was still fighting to survive, knowing that they were safe gave me strength. The following months were different. The children went to school in the mornings, and in the afternoons, they continued to come to the park to see me. But now they were arriving differently. They arrived clean, with their uniforms ironed, with their backpacks full of notebooks, and they arrived with stories. Daniel told me what he was learning in math. Miguel showed me his drawings. Carlitos read me the words he had learned. I listened to them with a full heart, because seeing them grow like that, seeing them flourish, was the greatest gift that life had given me. One day, Daniel told me something that left me speechless. Mrs. Alina, my teacher says I'm very good at math. He says if I keep this up, I can go to college when I grow up. I just stared at him. University. He nodded, excited. Yes, and I'm going. I'm going to study. I'm going to be an engineer or a doctor or something important. And I'm going to get my brothers off the streets. And you too. You don't have to get me out of anything, my boy. Yes, I do, he said, seriously. Because you saved us when no one else would. And I'll never forget that. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I only gave them bread, Daniel. No, he said, taking my hand. You gave us hope. And that's worth more than all the bread in the world. And at that moment I knew it had all been worth it. Every sacrifice, every humiliation, every sleepless night. Because those children had not only survived, they were blooming. And I had been part of that. The years continued to pass. I was aging, faster than I should have been. Perhaps. Working on the streets had taken its toll. My hands weren't just rough anymore. They were deformed by arthritis. My back was hunched, and walking long distances had become painful. But I wasn't complaining, because the children kept going. Daniel graduated from high school with top marks in his class. He earned a full scholarship to college. Then, against all odds, he got into university. Civil engineering. Miguel followed in his footsteps. He was more artistic, but just as brilliant. He studied architecture. And Carlitos, my little boy, turned out to be a genius with numbers. He went on to study business administration. The 3 of them worked while they studied. They did whatever they could, handing out flyers, washing cars, carrying boxes at the market. And every week, without fail, they came to see me. It wasn't in the park anymore. Now I had a stall again. Not in the big market, but on a quiet corner near the bus terminal. Don Heriberto had already retired, and the new manager didn't know me, didn't know my story. He let me sell there without any problems. It was a small, humble stall, but it was mine. And every Sunday, Daniel, Miguel, and Carlitos would arrive. They were no longer children, they were young men. Tall, strong, with dreams in their eyes. But to me, they were still my children. Mrs. Alina, Daniel would say to me every time I arrived, "Have you eaten yet?" "Yes, my child, don't worry, are you sure?" Because we brought food, and they brought out bags with fruit, vegetables, meat, things I couldn't afford. "You don't have to do this," I always told them. "Yes, we do," Miguel replied. "You never let us go hungry. We're not going to let you go hungry either." And so, little by little, they became my support. Not just emotional, also economical. They gave me money when they could. Not much, because they didn't have much either. But enough so that I could eat well, so that I wouldn't lack medicine when I was sick. One day, Daniel arrived with news that took my breath away. "Mrs. Alina, I graduated." I looked at him, confused. "Have you finished university yet?" He smiled, taking a piece of paper out of his backpack. "Your title, civil engineer," I read aloud, my hands trembling. "Daniel Hernandez Ruiz, civil engineer." I started to cry. He hugged me. "I did it, Mrs. Alina. I did it for you." "No, my child. You did it on your own." "No," he said, pulling back to look me in the eyes. "Without you, I would have died in the street, or I would have ended up stealing, or on drugs. But you taught me there's another way to live, with dignity, with kindness. And that saved me." I couldn't stop crying. "I'm so proud of you, Daniel." So proud. Miguel graduated 2 years later. He was an architect. Carlitos followed a year later. He has a degree in business administration. All three of them had jobs. They weren't rich, but they earned good money. Better than I had ever earned in my entire life. And they never forgot about me. In fact, they did something I never expected. One Sunday, the three of them arrived together. With serious faces, "Mrs. Alina," Daniel said, "we need to talk to you." I got scared. "Did something bad happen?" "No," said Miguel, smiling slightly. "Something good is happening." Carlitos took an envelope out of his backpack and handed it to me. "What is this?" I asked. Abrilo, I opened it. Inside were papers, legal documents, and a photograph of a small house that it's hers. Daniel said, "I froze that. The house, Mrs. Alina. It's yours. The three of us bought it. It's in your name now. You never have to pay rent again." I couldn't breathe. "No, they can't do this." "Yes, we can," said Miguel. "And we did, because you gave us everything when you had nothing. And now it's our turn." I broke down. I cried like I'd never cried in my life. They hugged me, all three of them. Like when they were children. "Thank you," I whispered between sobs. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "No, Mrs. Elena," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for everything." And at that moment, I understood something. That all the pain had been worth it. That all the tears, all the nights of hunger, all the humiliation, he had sown something beautiful, and now he was reaping the rewards. I moved into the house that the children had bought for me. It was small, simple, in a quiet neighborhood. It had 2 rooms, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a small patio in the back where I could put my plants. To me, it was a palace. For the first time in decades, I had a place of my own. A place where no one could kick me out. A place where I could rest without fear. The children helped me move. They carried my few belongings, my old bed, my little table, my pots, my bread trays, and they furnished the house for me, little by little. A used but comfortable armchair, a new table, curtains for the windows. I cried with every single thing they brought. "Yes," Mrs. Alina, Carlitos told me, laughing. "She's going to cry so much, she'll get dehydrated." But I couldn't help it. It was too much kindness, too much love. After a lifetime of giving, now someone was giving to me, and I didn't know how to receive it. I continued selling my bread. But now I did it from my front door. The children helped me set up a small stand outside. They painted a sign, "Doña Elena's homemade bread." And people started to arrive. Neighbors, passers-by, people who were walking by and stopped because of the smell. My business grew. Not much, but enough to live with dignity, and the children kept visiting me. Every Sunday without fail, until one day something changed. Daniel arrived alone. He came into my house with a serious face. He sat down on the sofa and remained silent. "What's wrong, my child?" I asked, worried. He took a deep breath. "Mrs. Alina, I was offered a job." "A job? That's good, isn't it?" "Yes, but it's in another state. Very far from here." I felt something tighten in my chest. "When are you leaving?" "In 2 weeks." I remained silent. "Mrs. Alina," he continued, his voice trembling, "I don't want to leave you, but this is a huge opportunity. I'm going to earn 3 times what I earn now. I'll be able to help you more. I'll be able to." "Daniel," I interrupted gently, "you have to leave." He looked at me, surprised. "That you have to leave? That opportunity is yours. You earned it, and I'm never going to be the reason you don't grow, but you." "I'm going to be okay," I said, smiling even though my soul ached. "I have my home, I have my bread, and I have my memories of you all. That's enough." He stood up and hugged me tightly. "I'm going to miss her a lot, and I love you, my child. But you'll make me happier seeing you succeed than keeping you here out of pity." "It's not pity," she said, pulling away to look at me. "It's love, I know. And that's precisely why you have to leave." Daniel left 2 weeks later. Miguel followed him a year later. He also got a job in another city. And Carlitos, my little boy, was the last to leave. A big company hired him. He had to move to the north of the country. Suddenly, I was alone again. But this time it was different, because she wasn't alone because she had been abandoned. I was alone because they were flying, and I had been the wind that propelled them. The first few months were tough. The house felt empty without their Sunday visits, without their laughter, without their hugs. But they called, every week, sometimes more. "How are you, Mrs. Alina? Have you eaten yet? Do you need anything?" And they sent me money, more than I needed. "You don't have to do this," he always told them. "Yes, we do," they replied. "You're our mother." And one takes care of their mother. One day, 5 years after they left, I received a call from Daniel. "Mrs. Alina, I have to tell you something." "Tell me, my child." "I'm getting married." I felt immense joy. "Oh, Daniel, how beautiful. What's his name?" "Mariana." "She's an architect. I met her at work, and she wants to meet her." "Me?" "Yes. I told her everything about you, everything you've done for us. And she says you're the most important person in my life, that you have to be at our wedding." I started to cry. "Of course I'll be there, my boy. Of course I will." I went to their wedding. The 3 children paid for my trip. They bought me a new dress. They treated me like a queen. And when Daniel introduced me to his wife, she hugged me and said, "Thank you for saving my husband. Thank you for making the world a better place." I couldn't stop crying. Miguel got married 2 years later, Carlitos the following year. And I was there for all 3 weddings, sitting in the front row, like the mother I always was to them. But the years kept passing, and I kept getting older. There came a point when I could no longer sell bread every day. My hands couldn't handle kneading the dough. My body couldn't stand for so long. But I didn't want to give up, because bread was the only thing he knew how to make. It was my identity, and without him, who was I? I was 65 years old when my body finally told me, enough. I woke up one morning and couldn't get out of bed. My legs wouldn't respond. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't hold anything. I got scared. I called Daniel. "Mrs. Alina, I'm on my way. Don't move. I've already spoken with my brothers. Let's all go." They arrived the next day, all 3 of them. With their wives, with their children. Because yes, now they had children. Little children who called me Grandma Alina, and showered me with kisses. They took me to the doctor. They ran all the tests, and the diagnosis was clear. My body was exhausted. Years of hard work, poor diet, and stress had taken their toll. I needed to rest. I could no longer work. "That's fine," I told the children as we left the doctor's office. "I've lived long enough. I've done what I had to do." "Don't say that," Daniel said, his eyes welling with tears. "You still have so much to live for." "But I can't sell bread anymore, my boy. And without that, what am I going to do?" They looked at each other. "Leave that to us," said Miguel. I didn't understand what they meant. But 2 weeks later, I found out. I was sitting at home, looking out the window, when I heard a noise outside. Engines. Many engines. I peeked out, and what I saw took my breath away. 3 SUVs. Big, black, shiny. the kind you only see on TV. They parked in front of my house, and from them came Daniel, Miguel, and Carlitos. But they didn't come alone. They came with something enormous, covered with a tarp. What? I started to say, but Daniel interrupted me. Mrs. Alina, come outside, you need to see this. I left slowly, leaning on my cane. The neighbors came out too, all watching, curious, amazed. Daniel stood in front of me and smiled. Mrs. Elena, you gave us bread when no one else would. You gave us hope when we were lost. You gave us love when the world had forgotten us. Miguel continued. And now, we want to give back a little of all that. Carlitos pulled the canvas, and underneath appeared a bakery. Not a stall, not a table, a complete bakery, portable, with an industrial oven, refrigerated display cases, shelves, everything you need. It's yours, Daniel said. We had it specially made for you. With ramps so you can move around with your cane. With chairs so you can sit down. With everything you need to bake bread without getting tired. I froze. No, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, said Miguel. And you will. Because you deserve this and more. But how? The three of us have our own businesses now, Carlitos explained. We're doing well. Very well. And it's all thanks to you. So this isn't a gift, it's a debt. A debt we'll never finish paying off. I started to cry. The neighbors began to applaud. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The children he had fed with leftover bread. The children whom everyone despised. The children who slept in the streets. Now they were successful men, businessmen, parents. And there they were, in front of my house, giving back everything I had given them, multiplied 1,000-fold. Also, Daniel said, pulling out some papers. We hired 2 people to help you. You just have to supervise. Teach them your recipes. But they're going to do the heavy lifting. And we're going to promote their bread, Miguel added. On social media, in flyers, everywhere. It's going to be the most famous bakery in the neighborhood. And the profits are all yours, said Carlitos. So you can live peacefully, without worries. I hugged all 3 of them, and I cried. I cried like never before. Of joy, of gratitude, of love. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you, my children. Thank you. No, Mrs. Alina, Daniel said, his voice breaking. Thank you for everything. The bakery opened a week later, and it was a success. People came from all over. Not just for the bread, which was still delicious. They came for the history. Because the children had told everything. In interviews, on social media, everywhere. The story of the woman who gave them bread when no one else did. The woman who lost her job for helping them. The woman who never gave up. And people wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to support me. They wanted to meet me. I became something of a neighborhood legend. Dona Alina, the one with the blessed bread. But for me, none of that mattered. What mattered was that my children were okay. That they had achieved their dreams. That they were happy. And that they had never forgotten about me. One day while I was sitting in my bakery watching my assistants work, someone arrived that I wasn't expecting. Wake. The woman who had taken me off the market so many years ago. Now she was old, hunched over, with gray hair and a wrinkled face. He approached slowly, with his head down. Alina, he said softly. I looked at her. Wake. She nodded. I came too. To ask for your forgiveness. I remained silent. I was so cruel to you, she continued, her voice trembling. I drove you out of the market. I humiliated you. And all because I was envious. Envious of your kindness. Of your heart. And now, seeing everything you've accomplished, everything those children did for you, I realized how wrong I was. I looked into her eyes. I saw genuine remorse. Do you want some bread? I asked him. She looked at me surprised. That if you'd like some bread, they're freshly baked. Her eyes filled with tears. Are you going to give it to me? I smiled. Sure, sit down. I gave him a chocolate conchla, the same one I gave to the children. She took it with trembling hands and cried. Thank you, Alina, thank you, and he left. I just sat there looking at the street, thinking about the whole journey I had made. And all the pain, and all the struggle, but also in all love. And I realized something. In the end, goodness always wins. Maybe not immediately, it might take years, decades, but he always wins. Because the love you sow is never lost. It's just waiting for the perfect moment to bloom. And when it blooms beautifully. Today when I sit in my bakery and see people coming and going, smiling, buying bread, sharing stories, I think about everything I've been through. I think of that 40-year-old woman who barely had enough to eat, but who decided to share what little she had. I think about the nights I cried alone, not knowing if I would be able to pay the rent the next day. I think about the times people told me I was crazy, that I was wasting my life, that those children weren't worth it. And I think about the day 3 trucks parked in front of my house. The day my children returned, not to ask me for anything, but to give me everything back. And I wonder, what would have happened if I had listened to people? What would have happened if I had closed my heart out of fear? What would have happened if I had stopped giving them bread, because it wasn't my problem? Daniel would not be an engineer. Miguel wouldn't be an architect. Carlitos wouldn't have his company. And 3 children reportedly died in the street, forgotten as if they had never existed. But it didn't happen that way. Because someone decided to watch, someone decided to give, someone decided to believe that those children deserved a chance. And that someone was me. Not because she was special, not because she was rich, not because she had anything extraordinary to offer, but because I had something very simple, and a heart that didn't know how to close its doors. Now I ask you, who are listening to this story, how many times have you walked past someone who needed help? How many times have you thought, not my problem, and kept walking? How many times have you closed your heart because you were afraid of being hurt, of being betrayed, of having what little you have taken away? I understand. The world teaches us to protect ourselves, to take care of what's ours, to not trust, to not give without receiving. But let me tell you something. Kindness is never wasted. You may not see the results immediately. Perhaps years will pass, decades. Maybe you'll never see anything. But that doesn't mean it wasn't worth it, because every act of kindness, no matter how small, changes something in the universe. Maybe it will change someone else's life, or maybe it will just change your own soul. But it changes you. I don't regret anything. Not a single piece of bread I gave away. Not a single night I went hungry to feed them. Not a single humiliation I suffered to defend them. Because all of that brought me here. At this moment, where I can look back and say with certainty, it was worth it. Every tear, every sacrifice, every moment of pain, it was worth it. So I invite you to ask yourself, what are you sowing today? What legacy will you leave? What will they remember about you when you're gone? Because in the end, the only thing we take with us from this life are the hearts we touch. And the only thing that really matters is the love we gave. Not the one we received, the one we gave. So give, even if you don't have much. Even if you're afraid. Even if people tell you you're crazy. And, because you never know when a simple piece of bread can change a life, or 3, or your own. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect, if it reminded you that there is still goodness in the world, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications. Because I share stories like this every week. True stories. Stories that inspire, stories that remind us why it's worth being a good person. And share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Perhaps this is the sign they were waiting for, to not give up. To continue being good. To continue believing in humanity. See you in the next story. And remember, kindness always comes back. Always.